Hello, welcome to the course Linguistic Typology through Indian Languages. This is Module 1, Lecture 1. So I welcome you all in this course. So in this course today I will talk about what is linguistic typology, what are the aims of linguistic typology, and what is language universal. Why do we need to study linguistic typology? And also at the end I will give you an overview of the whole course. So now let's know what is linguistic typology. Linguistic typology is basically a cross-linguistic study of language diversity, universals, and the structural parameters that govern human language. So we all speak languages and superficially it might look very different to each other. So Bangla might look very different from Telugu, or German might look very different from Chinese. But then all these languages might be very different, but then there are lots of commonalities. There are certain parameters which govern or which rule all human languages at every level, at the level of phonology, morphology, syntax, word order, and beyond. So linguistic typology is a branch of linguistics that studies linguistic diversity across unrelated languages to find differences, correlations with the aim of finding language universals. So what are the features that govern all the human languages? What are those parameters or rules which are common across languages? There are certain parameters beyond which languages do not go, or there are certain parameters or certain possibilities which are there for languages, and then there are certain things which are impossible for languages. You might have seen that whatever language we talk about, languages are very different, but then they have certain commonalities like the functional commonality. They all have the same function which they perform. And then when we talk about the structures, when we talk about different levels of structures, there also we can find certain commonalities. And also you know that language is used by human brain, right? So as human species, we also share commonalities in our brain, which is again reflected in the language. So by studying diverse languages, typologists can predict features of unstudied languages, identify impossible structures, and understand which combinations of structures are permissible. The study begins with a set of diverse languages and leads to generalizations applicable to nearly all the languages of the world. So basically we are studying few languages which might be very different from each other, but then based on their structure or based on their how they are formed or how they are governed by various rules, we can also predict features about the understudied or less studied or not studied languages. So typology is a comprehensive investigation of cross-linguistic variation. When we study various different languages, then only we can know what can be the possibilities in language. It aims at uncovering and understanding the range of structures and parameters available in human languages for expressing a wide variety of core concepts. So when we study different or diverse languages, then only we can know about the possible parameters. Or I can say, then only we can know that which parameters or which things are not possible in human language. Secondly, typology involves establishing cross-linguistic generalizations that hold for all or most human languages. And these generalizations are called language universals. That means that there are certain rules, certain parameters, certain features which are common across languages. Like for example, I can say every spoken language has vowels and consonant. This is a very common language universal, right? This is a very basic one, anyone easily can guess, right? So whichever language you speak or whichever language you know, there will be vowels and consonant. So this is this might look very simple, but again this is a language universal. This is a very common feature, or you can say this is a commonality among all the diverse languages of the world. Similarly, though this is a very simple one, we can get more complex and more different types of features or language universals which are present for all the languages. Universals also reflect tendencies which are well attested across linguistically. A statement that languages tend to have more oral than nasal vowels reflects such an overall tendency. So, we not only talk in terms of absolute terms like all the languages have consonants and vowels, but we also talk about tendencies or preferred features. Like we can see, most of the spoken languages have more oral vowels than nasal vowels. That is also a tendency or a preferred feature found across the languages. So, what we can see is that though they are very simple, you can say very simple universals, yet they give us an idea that across the world, though the languages can be very diverse, though the languages can be very different, yet there are certain commonalities which can be found across the world, across the languages. And that is what we try to find out in linguistic typology. So, this portion is taken from Eichenwald and Dixon 2017, which you can refer to. The reference is given at the end. So, linguistic typology helps establish correlations between subparts of language as well. So, there are various parts like phonology, morphology, syntax and beyond, and also within that we can again find other subparts. So, what are the relations between these subparts that can be also established through linguistic typology? If a language has an overt marker for plural number or nouns with inanimate reference, like if a language has plural markers for objects like trees, house, which are inanimate, then it is pretty much bound to also have number marking for animate and human references like dog, man. So, if in a language plural markers exist for inanimate objects like tree, chair, house, then it is likely that the language will also have plural markers for human and animate objects like man, dog, cat, all those objects. So, again this tells us about the correlation. If I find this feature in the language, then it is probable that the other feature will also exist in the language. Finally, linguistic typology aims at offering explanations why there are certain linguistic universals and certain tendencies. Why it is so that I said when there are plural markers for inanimate object in the language, that there will be also plural markers for the animate object. Why so? So, that is also an aim of linguistic typology to explore. Features and parameters employed in such procedures have been helpful in understanding how human languages work. So, basically through that we can know about how on the whole languages work. And when I say languages work, I do not mean one language, I mean language in general across the world. How do different languages work? What are the commonalities? And how actually our brain works with language. Because as I said that we being common human species, we use the language. So, we have also commonality being the same species. So, when we are using language, how our brain is actually working with language. So, what makes language different? When I am talking about different languages or diverse languages, we know we can very superficially say that I don't understand this language, so this is very different from my native language. But languages are different, and the features that make them different can be of various types. But then these features are not innumerable. That means there are already certain set of features which make one language different from the other. These are a lot, these are not very few. So, that might look that there are lots and there are no, it's not innumerable, but it is innumerable. These features which are actually there called parameters. So these are the features which make one language different from the other, or parameters are those rules which govern the languages. Typology aims to identify these set of parameters across all the level of language structures. May it be the level of phonology, where we talk about sound systems and phonological pattern. It can be at the level of morphology, where we talk about word structures, morpheme organizations, how do morpheme gets attached to a word, and we talk of different types of morphological patterns. Syntactic patterns, like how sentence structures are there and how do word order affect various other components of a sentence, and semantics and beyond. So we also look about the various levels of languages to know what are those set of rules which are possible in language, and then what are the rules which are not possible, what are the structures which are not possible, and which are the structures which are not only possible but also preferred. So there might be x and y, two types of parameters, but we can see that x is more preferred than y. Then we also need to ask, why is it so that most of the languages is preferring x over y? So that is also a area of study in linguistic typology. Now, linguistic parameters also help us to predict other features. When we know about certain parameters, when we know about certain features of a language, then we can also predict about the other features. If we know certain parameters, then based on that, we can predict about the other features. Different languages can be categorized based on different properties. For instance, take at position, which are linguistic elements expressing the semantic relation between a verb and a related noun phrases. So in this pictures, you can see there is a ball and there is a book, both in relation to the table. Now please take a moment and think, how will you say the position of ball and how will you say the position of the table? Try speaking it in both English and in your native language. Okay. So I guess in English you will say the ball is on the table, right? And I will give you one Hindi example because Hindi is largely spoken, and so you can also try with your language, whichever language you speak. Here you can see that the ball is on the table. The table is in relation to table we were talking. We are taking the position of the ball in relation to the table. And we are saying on the table, so on is coming before the table. So you can see how on is actually coming before the table. Now you can also see here per. So this per is coming after the table. So when we are saying about the ball in relation to the table, we are saying this per is the on. So we are saying it after the table, and here we are saying it before the table. Now what do we see? We see that this is not actually random. This has to do a lot with the word order. So when we talk about on or per, these are actually prepositions and postpositions. So this on is called preposition because it is coming before the table, and this per is called postposition because it is coming after the table. Now if you look at it and look at the word orders of these sentences, you will see that in English we follow SVO. So subject, verb, object, right? Is the verb here. So we can see that the ball subject is followed by the verb is and then followed by the object on the table. But in Hindi example we can see it is SOV. Hai is the auxiliary here. So hai is the verb which is coming at the end. So ball table per hai, the word order is SOV. Now there is a correlation between the preposition and postposition with the word order. So together preposition and postposition we can also say at position. So linguistic typologists have discovered that the use of preposition or postposition is not an independent phenomena. It is not like depending on its which it can occur anywhere in the sentence. There is a remarkably strong correlation between the types of adposition and the word order. So we have seen that verb initial languages, that means where a verb appears before subject or object in the clause, there we have prepositions, like you can see in English. While in the languages where the languages follow word final word order, there we find that the language has postposition, like in Hindi where verb is coming at the end or the verb is appearing after the subject and object. So these languages are called verb final language. So in verb final languages we have postposition instead of preposition. Now looking at the word order, we can now guess whether the language will have preposition or postposition. We also know that preposition or postpositions are not independent phenomena. They are largely based on the word order of a sentence. Now you might wonder that why am I saying that Hindi is SOV or English is SVO? Because we can at times also change the word orders, and in Indian languages we can do it a lot. So I can also say table par hai ball or something like that. But when we say or when we talk about word orders, we mainly look at a simple declarative sentence, and based on that we talk about the word order of a language, and that's what has been done here. Now what is it that makes verb initial and verb final languages opt for preposition and postpositions respectively? So that is a question that typologists will ask. This is not only about the relation between the position of the verb and adposition, but also similar questions we find between different other components of a sentence or of a language. Why are such relations found across languages? Now I said or I gave you examples of Hindi and English, which are very different languages. Right, so Hindi and English, it's not like one who doesn't understand Hindi will easily understand Hindi if he or she knows English, or one who knows English, Hindi will easily understand English if he doesn't know it. So they are different languages. But across the languages, again I can take different other languages, and then based on the word order, I can tell whether the language has preposition or postposition. So basically across the languages of the world, this phenomena is being largely followed. Why so? What is the relation then between the adposition and the verb? Why verb position is affecting adposition? That is a question that typologists will ask. Asking such questions as these is important because they may lead to an understanding of the nature of language. Furthermore, such an understanding may provide useful insights into the way the human mind shapes language, or more generally how the human mind works. So as I said, we share the same human mind biologically, and also we share languages, which again has commonalities of the functional commonality is always there. Then what is it that there is a common way? What are the common features across the languages? That's what we are curious to know. Now there are also various other branches which work on the same line, or in the sense which also wants to explore how languages evolve or how languages share features. In linguistic typology, we want to look at the differences across languages to find the limitations and the possibilities of human language in general. If I study 1,000 languages, then I can know about which are the patterns which are most common. I can know what are the relations between various components, and that's what typologists do. This is an inductive method. By that I mean we look at the languages first. We look at 1,000 languages or various languages, or maybe various features of different languages, or maybe one feature of different languages, and then based on that we induce certain generalizations. So various languages were studied, and then it was seen that word position is largely affecting the adpositions. Right. So looking at various languages, after that certain generalization is taken out from that. Now when we talk about historical linguistics, they also compare languages. They also look at the structures of languages, but they have the focus of looking on similarities based on the common origin. The focus is mostly on the common origin, how languages have evolved, and also to see how languages have changed over the period of time. So there is a little difference in the main aim. And when we talk about areal linguistics, we see that areal linguistics compare language structures based on common geography, where we see in the same region or in the same geography there are different languages being spoken. We try to find the common features present there because they are in the same geography. So we can also talk about contact induced changes in areal linguistics. Though in linguistic typology we also work with historical linguistics, we also work with areal linguistics. But the main aim or the focus of linguistic typology is to look for the language universals, to look for those common parameters which govern all the languages. So now coming to the overview of the course, what we are actually going to do in this course, we are going to talk about little about the history of the linguistic typology. How did the whole field of or the subdiscipline of linguistic typology evolve over the period of time? What are the different approaches to language universals? Because when we talk about language universals, I said typologists aim to look at those language universals which govern all the languages. You might think of other subdisciplines also which has the same aim of exploring language universals or looking at the parameters which govern all the languages. So we will also discuss about other possible ways or other subdisciplines through which we look for language universals. We will talk about different types of typological parameters like word order typology, quantitative and qualitative methods, how we collect data, because I said in typology we look at the data first, we study the languages first, and then from there we induce the rules or we get the parameters. It is not the other way round. So it is not that we already have the rules and we imply it on the languages. Rather, we explore the languages, we study the languages, and then from there we derive or we bring out the rules or parameters. We will also talk about various implementations of the available databases and corpus. So now we find lots of works being done both in quantitative and qualitative typology. We can find lots of databases which are there like world walls. So you can also look at that. So all this database has a good amount of languages and their structures are mentioned which we will explore. We will also talk about morphological typology, case alignment, and other certain features of languages like agreement, classifier, compound verbs, each CVs. So there are all these components which are part of various languages, but of course not all the languages. How do they work within the language? How we can look at these features and predict other features? How we have categorized languages based on, say, case alignment or word orders or morphological patterns, that we will discuss here. We will talk about various interesting subtopics like reduplications, and also we will talk about features of Indian languages. How in India we see different language families having different languages, and what are the common features or what are the different features across these languages. We will talk about that. We will also talk about language continuum. And when we talk about language continuum, we also need to talk about various models like the wave model and the tree model and different variationalist model. So how there are different models through which we study language. When we talk about Indian scenario, we also need to talk about contact induced changes, and as I said that we do study areal linguistics in collaboration with typology. So we have seen lots of studies where both typological point of view and areal context both has been used. So we will talk about contact induced changes, contact situation in India, India as a linguistic area, and also we will discuss the recent typological works which are being done right now. We have seen there are lots of new sub-branches which has evolved. We have seen lots of works being done nowadays on lexical typology, on quantitative typology. We will try to mention and at least give you an introduction of those. We will also talk about generative typology and application of typology. We have seen that lots of application of typology is there. Computational typology has also evolved a lot. Computational methods have made our work easier a lot, so we can easily get the structures, we can easily map them. So how do we take help of computational method to explore typology or to study typology, and how computational typology can actually help in creating various applications. So we will also explore those fields. I hope you will enjoy this course. The summing points of this lecture. So a cross-linguistic study of language diversity, universals and the structural parameters that govern human language at every level from phonology, morphology, syntax to word order and other alignments. So this is what typology is. Typology involves establishing cross-linguistic generalizations that hold for all or most human languages. These generalizations are often called language universals. So you also know what is language universal now. Languages are studied through various parameters. These parameters help us to understand the language parameters. These are the key points what I talked today about, and I also gave you the overview of the course. This is the reference, so you can go through these and know more about this. I hope you enjoyed this lecture. Thank you.